Our second lesson comes to us from the Gospel according to Mark, the 8th chapter, beginning with the 27th verse. Here again, the Word of God. When Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They answered him, "John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said to him, "Get behind me, Satan. For you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." And he said to them, "Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see that the kingdom of God has come with power." Just 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. Then he was transfigured before them. And his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. There appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. The Gospel of the Lord. This morning I have been forcibly reminded of how great it is to be human, to simply be in the flesh, to connect with people, to gather with them, to laugh and to celebrate. And I've been also made aware of how painful it is to be human, how fragile people are, how easily offended, how we get hurt. Ash Wednesday, coming on Wednesday, is a celebration, an affirmation that we are human, with both the good and the bad, and the joy and the sorrow and all the things that come with being mortal. It's not an easy thing, this humanity business. You know the poem by Robert Frost, Way, Way Too Well, that road not taken. So let me read that to you, because we're going to look at two of the roads that diverge from each other, that we humans find ourselves standing at the crossroads between them. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. Both that morning equally lay in leaves, no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. So here we walk, and we come to two paths that diverge. We look at our guide, and it says, this road is a tougher road. This is the harder way to go. It's ranked 5 out of 5 in difficulty. It's called the Fire Mountain Road. The Fire Mountain Road. Fire Mountain. And this is called the Road of Fertility. It's rated 2. It's an easy sort of deal. You can't crawl on your hands and knees, but that's about it. It's rated 2. Road to Fertility, Fire Mountain Road. Let's go a little ways up this one first. This image that we find in Micah is a very old image. It goes all the way back to the book of Exodus. In the time of Moses, it is believed, in fact it's been discovered, that there was volcanic activity going on in the southern part of Saudi Arabia. The volcano's firing could be seen as far away as Jerusalem. And so according to tradition, when Moses brought the people of Israel to come to meet God, and there was fire and there was lightning and there was smoke, it probably was because Mount Sinai was in southern Arabia and it was erupting. And in that ancient time when a mountain erupted, it was because God had landed feet first, right on top of the mountain. And that created the boiling and the bubbling and the volcanic action and the scariness of that. Fire, volcanic fire, is something out of control. It's hard for us to imagine unless we witnessed it, how terrifying that is. Have you ever seen a volcano go off in person? I have not. Anybody here done that? Raise your hand if you have. It's got to be scary. I've seen it on television. I went to see Mount St. Helens after the big blow. And I got to tell you something, that must have been very frightening and very impressive. A friend of mine was in the doctoral program. He had just been put in charge of FEMA in Seattle, so that if Mount Hood exploded, he had a few minutes to get everybody out of Seattle. And that's what he told us as he crossed his eyes in the class. Because there's no way you get everybody out of Seattle after Mount Hood goes off. The mountain of fire, the mountain of destruction. And Micah paints a picture of God coming from heaven and landing on the mountains. And what mountains? All the mountains, but in particular, the mountain of Samaria, which is the capital of Israel, and the Mount of Jerusalem, Mount Zion, the capital of Judah, that God in his presence lands on the mountain and there's fire. God is out of control. This is a God who does not obey our agenda. This is a God to which we bring our agendas and watch them consumed in fire and are given new commandments. That's a little nerve-wracking, so let's go this way. Let's go up this little hill of fertility, a little garden of fertility. This little rascal right here. This is great. And we can just kind of cash out here. You see, during a time when Micah was preaching and teaching, the people worshiped the gods of fertility. This is kind of a PG-13. Cover your ears if you're easily offended. But the idea was you put these high poles, these phallic symbols up on these hills, and you had these sort of, orgiastic rites around them, and by doing so, you inspired the god Baal and the Asherim, the many goddesses, to cavort with each other, and that's where fertility came from. You get what I'm saying? You could get the gods to do exactly what you want if you act in the right way, you see? These guys, this Baal in particular, he's kind of a lusty fellow, and he can be manipulated. What a great God this is. Wouldn't it great to have God in your back pocket, that whatever your agenda is, you can manipulate that God to make this God do the same thing and support you? This is a God that can't disappoint. Not to mention their rites and their sacraments are pretty cool too. The guys loved it. Here's the problem, of course. You worship up here and you get your agenda met. You have a God who you can manipulate, but it's not God at all. No, it's not God at all. This is no God. There is no God that can be manipulated. There is a God who entrusts himself to us, but there's a God who still gives commands. There's a God we can kill, and he still comes back from the dead. This God is not real. And so this is a useless climb. So let me ask you something. Would you rather worship of God that is the projection of your own needs and imaginations and what you want, your own economic views, your own political judgments, your own personal tastes? Would you rather worship that God? It's kind of looking in a mirror, but written larger. Or would you rather worship a God who is totally unlike you, really kind of dangerous, and can break forth at any time and consume everything you think is important, but truly is God? I mean, really? Which one would you like? Jesus brings 3 of his disciples along. And he takes them up this mountain. And in this mountain, in this theophany, in the burning glow of this transfiguration, the disciples see, these 3 disciples understand that all of everything that God ever said through the law and everything God ever said through the prophets was actually Jesus speaking, and is now Jesus speaking still. And you listen to him, because he is the fire. He brings the fire. You listen to him. And the disciples are confused. They thought they'd gone up this mountain. Oh, Jesus, this is fantastic. We're going to build a little booth here. And we're going to invite all our friends. We may sell tickets. And we'll be in control from now on of everything you guys do up here, because, this is great. Moses, Elijah, you, Jesus, you're all in our control. We can lock you up in a little booth. We recognize that the disciples were wrong. That you can't treat God that way. Two roads diverge right in front of you. And either it is an easy and false God that you will follow, and you will leave here undisturbed, sure, convinced that this is the God to follow. Or you will leave here prepared to have your world rocked by the God who will burn a hole in your life and open you up to all the possibilities that are out there. The choice is yours. In your humanity, you will some days get confused, but the choice remains. That road, this road. The broad and easy way, or the narrow and difficult way that leads to life.